Welcome. I'm really glad you're here. This isn't a hype webinar and it's not about quick wins or shortcuts. This is a conversation for women who are at a crossroads. Women who've lived some life, built careers, raised families, given a lot, and are now asking a much deeper question. What am I building next? And will it actually last? If you've ever felt like you've done all the right things, but the outcome still feels fragile, exhausting, or dependent on you always being on, you're in the right room. Today I'm going to walk you through a different model. One built on leverage, ownership, and legacy, not hustle. You don't need to be technical, and you don't even need a big following, and you definitely don't need to start over from scratch. You just need to be open to seeing what's possible when you stop selling time and start building something that can outlive your effort. Okay, now before I explain the model, I want to ground this conversation in reality. You'll notice I'm not reading the slides word for word, and they're there for you to read and absorb at your own pace. My role is to guide you through the thinking behind them. Some things will land straight away and others will make more sense as we go. Now, most women I speak to at this stage, they're not lazy, they're not unmotivated, and they're definitely not afraid of hard work. They're tired of building things that depend entirely on them. They've worked jobs where the income stopped the moment they stopped. They've tried businesses that promised flexibility but delivered pressure. They've invested time, energy, even money, only to realise there was no asset being built underneath them. So the question stops being, can I do this? And it becomes, is this actually worth building? And that's what today is about. Not another income idea, but a smarter structure. One that respects your time, your experience, and the season of life that you're in right now. Now, something interesting happens in midlife. It's not that ambition disappears, it actually sharpens. But the tolerance for wasted effort just drops. So you start questioning things like that you once accepted, like trading time for money, hustling without leverage, being the hardest worker in the room with the smallest margin of safety. And quietly a new desire forms. Not just for income, but for ownership. Ownership of your time, ownership of your decisions, ownership of something that doesn't reset to zero every month. This is usually the moment when women realise, I don't want to start again. I want to build forward. And that's the lens I want you looking through for the rest of this presentation. When we hear the word freedom, it's often being sold to us in extremes. Work all the time now so you can stop later, grind harder, push more, sacrifice longer. But for most women in midlife, that version of freedom doesn't fit anymore. What we're actually looking for is something quieter and something smarter. Freedom looks like flexibility without chaos, income without constant pressure, growth that works with your life, not against it, and a path where you're not trading one form of burnout for another. This is why the model I'm sharing today resonates so deeply with women in this season. It doesn't ask you to do more, it asks you to build differently. And once you see that distinction, it's very hard to unsee it. This is usually the uncomfortable realisation. You can be capable, you can be committed, and you can even be successful by most definitions, and still feel like everything depends on you showing up, pushing and producing. The problem isn't effort, the problem is the structure. Now, when income relies on constant output, there's no buffer, no margin, no breathing room. So even when things are going well, there's a quiet pressure underneath. What happens if I slow down? What happens if life changes again? Most women don't need more motivation. They need a model that doesn't punish them for being human. That's the gap this presentation is addressing. Now, you didn't start looking for something different because you were bored. You started looking because something no longer added up. You wanted more control over your time, income that wasn't capped by hours or energy, work that felt meaningful, not draining, a way to grow without starting from zero again. For many women, this search didn't come from ambition alone. It came from responsibility. Supporting family, planning for the future, wanting stability without sacrificing presence. And somewhere along the way, you realised the way I've always earned money doesn't match the life I want anymore. That awareness isn't a problem, it's a signal. And the rest of this presentation is about what to do after that signal shows up. This is the part most women feel but don't always articulate. You can be doing everything right and still feel one step away from pressure. Because when income is tied to one-time effort, it resets every month. There's no compounding, no cushion, and no asset underneath what you're building. So even when the money comes in, it doesn't always feel secure. It feels temporary. And that's not because you failed, and it's not because you didn't work hard enough. It's because the model itself was never designed to grow without you. Now, there's a big difference between earning money and building something that lasts. And once you see that distinction, you can't unsee it. I want to be really clear about who this path is designed for and who it isn't. This is for women who are done starting again, want stability, not chaos, value integrity over hype, are willing to learn and be supported, and are thinking long term, not just about the next payout. And it's not for the women who are looking for shortcuts, want something without participating, are chasing trends or quick money, prefer to work completely alone, or aren't ready to take responsibility for what they build. Now, there's nothing wrong with either side of that line, but clarity here matters. The women this works best for are the ones who want to build something real, in a way that still respects their life. Now, this is where a lot of things finally click. Most of us were taught one way to earn. You work, you get paid, and then you start again. That's linear income. If you stop, the income stops. If you slow down, everything feels fragile and there's no compounding effect. A leverage model works differently. You build it once and that effort can continue to generate income over time. Not because you're working harder, but because you're building something that exists way beyond you. Now, this is the difference between always producing and owning an asset. For most women in midlife, this is the missing piece. Not more effort, but better structure. Now, I want to share this part briefly because this isn't about my resume, it's about context. I didn't come into this from privilege or a perfect setup. I came into it after years of working hard, starting again, and carrying responsibility. I know what it's like to do all the right things and still feel like there's no real strategy underneath it. What mattered to me wasn't chasing more money. It was building something that didn't disappear the moment I slowed down. Something that could grow without burning me out, and something that felt steady, ethical, and long-term. That's why leverage matters to me. It's not a buzzword, but as a way of living and working that actually makes sense at this stage of life. This is the point where I slow things down intentionally, because not all business models are created equal. What you build on matters, and what sits underneath the income matters, and whether something is designed for the long term really matters in midlife. So rather than jumping straight into the features or numbers, I want to talk about the model itself. The foundation it's built on, the kind of problems it solves, and why that matters if you're looking to build something that lasts. This is a simple principle, but changes everything. The bigger the problem being solved, the more sustainable the business becomes. Not because of hype and not because of pressure, but because people are willing to invest in solutions that genuinely improve their lives. At this stage of life, most women aren't interested in pushing products or chasing commissions. They want to be part of something that actually adds value. So before we talk about the products or the structure, it's important to understand what kind of problems people are already seeking solutions for. And when you zoom out and look at what's happening globally, the problems people are trying to solve aren't niche or trendy. They're everyday household level concerns. People are thinking more about their health and their energy. They're more aware of what they're consuming and bringing into their homes. They're questioning chemicals, plastics, and environmental impact. And they're feeling the pressure of rising living costs and wanting more financial stability. Now, these aren't fringe issues, and they're not going away. They're kinds of problems people actively look for solutions to, not because they're told to, but because life demands it. And this is why the foundation of the model matters. When a business is built around real ongoing problems, it has staying power. Now, this is where everything I've talked about so far becomes tangible. The structure behind this is built around a Japanese wellness technology company called Enagic, which manufactures premium water ionisation system used in homes and wellness clinics around the world. This model is built on two things working together. First, purpose-driven products. These are everyday products people actually use in their homes. They're not speculative, they're not trendy, and they're not one-time purchases. They're designed around well-being, lifestyle, and environmental responsibility. Second, an asset-based business structure. This is what allows effort to compound instead of reset. Now, what personally drew me to this model was the long-term thinking behind it. The idea that if you build this with intention and integrity, you're not just earning income, you're building an asset. Something that doesn't disappear when you stop working, and something that, if built properly, can be passed on. That combination, real products and a legacy-capable structure, is what makes this model fundamentally different. When you're building something for the long term, who you build it with matters. This isn't a startup, it isn't a trend-driven company, and it isn't built on hype. It's an established global organisation with decades of history, a long-term vision, and a strong ethical framework. What mattered to me here was stability, products designed to last, technology with a proven track record, and a company that thinks in terms of decades, not quick wins. This is also a product-based model, not speculation-based. There's no inventory hoarding, there's no pressure to chase friends, no dependency on constantly recruiting people just to make it work. And when you're thinking about building something that could potentially outlive your active effort, this kind of foundation really matters. This conversation is happening at a very specific moment in time. Most people are more conscious about their health. They're more selective about what they bring into their homes, and they're far more aware of how fragile traditional income structures can be. At the same time, many women are reassessing work, purpose, and sustainability. Not just financially, but emotionally and energetically. What makes this model relevant now is that it sits at the intersection of those shifts. It's not built on novelty, it's built on awareness. And when a business model aligns with how people are already thinking and living, it has longevity. That's what you want in this season of life, something that makes sense today and still makes sense years from now. Now, when people hear the word leverage, they often assume complexity. In reality, it's about where effort is placed. In a linear model, effort is spent over and over and over again just to maintain income. In a leveraged model, effort is spent building something that can continue without constant input. Inside this structure, leverage comes from shared system, repeatable processes, and a model that allows many people to benefit from the same foundation. You're not inventing anything, you're not doing this alone, and you're not required to be on all the time. Leverage simply means your time and energy are respected. And for many women in midlife, that's the missing piece that they've been searching for. One of the strengths of this model is that it isn't dependent on a single product or a single outcome. The structure supports multiple products working within the same ecosystem. That matters because it means you're not relying on one offer, income isn't tied to one decision, and growth doesn't hinge on a single entry point. Everything feeds into the same structure, the same compensation plan, and the same long-term asset. So instead of starting over each time something changes, you're building depth inside one system. And this is where leverage becomes very real. You're not stacking separate businesses, you're strengthening one. Now, this was the turning point for me. I wasn't just looking for something that paid me, I was looking for something that meant something. A structure where effort wasn't wasted, where time didn't just disappear, and where what I built could continue beyond me, actively showing up every day. What personally attracted me to this business structure was the idea of ownership. The fact that this is built with care and integrity. It's not just the income, it's an asset. Something that can be grown, protected, and eventually passed on. That kind of thinking shifts everything. You stop asking, how much can I make this month? And you start asking, what am I building over the next decade? This is the kind of structure that changes the way you think about work and life. It's no longer about squeezing everything into today. It's about building something that supports you over time. For many women, this means having choices as life shifts, not feeling panicked if circumstances change, and knowing there's something underneath what you're doing. It also means not carrying the pressure alone. You're building inside a system with support, guidance, and a long-term view. That kind of stability matters, not just financially, but emotionally. Especially in a season of life where there's certainty and sustainability become more important than speed. One of the biggest concerns women have at this point is scale. They don't want something that starts small and then quietly turns into another full-time job. What's different here is that growth doesn't require you to do more, it requires the structure to do more. As the business grows, systems stay the same, support increases, and your role becomes clearer, not heavier. You're not managing chaos, you're building within a framework that's designed to expand without consuming your life. Now, you'll notice in the middle column that at a higher leadership levels, parts of this structure are designed to be willable, meaning that what's built doesn't automatically disappear when you step back. That's the difference between growth that feels stressful and growth that feels sustainable. And for women in midlife, that distinction matters more than ever. I want to demystify this part because this is where people often overthink. Getting started here isn't about having everything figured out. It's about choosing a starting point that fits your life. There are different ways people enter the business, depending on their goals, timing, and capacity. Some people begin by learning and using the products. and some are more focused on the business side from the start. Others do a combination of both. There's no single right way and no expectation to rush. What matters is that once you're in, you're building inside the same structure with the same support and the same long-term opportunity. This is about alignment, not pressure. I want to be very honest about what makes this work. This isn't something you join and hope for the best, and it's not something you're left to figure out on your own either. What sits underneath this model is structured training, ongoing mentorship, and a community of people building in the same direction. You don't need to know everything on day one. You don't need to be confident before you begin. What matters is a willingness to learn, apply, and stay consistent. This works best for women who are prepared to show up steadily, not perfectly, and who value guidance over guessing. That's how real momentum is built. At this point, it's important to zoom back in and keep this simple. This isn't about doing everything at once, and it's not about becoming someone that you're not. Day to day, this works through sharing conversations you're already having, using systems that already exist, and being supported as you learn how to do this properly. You're not creating funnels from scratch, you're not cold pitching strangers, and you're not trying to hold everything in your head. The structure is already there, the training's already there. Your role is to learn how to plug into it calmly and consistently. And that's what makes this sustainable. And this is the point where I want to be very clear about how I work. This isn't a course you buy and disappear into, and it's not a hands-off, do-it-yourself situation. This is a partnership. That means direct mentorship, clear guidance as you build, and support while you learn how this model actually works in real life. I keep this high touch on purpose because this is about doing things properly, not rushing. So I work with women who are ready to be supported, who value clarity over chaos, who are prepared to build something steadily and intentionally. If you're looking for a shortcut, this won't be the right fit. But if you're looking for structure, support, and a long-term path forward, this is where all that begins. I want you to see who this is really built for. These aren't influencers or full-time marketers. They're everyday women and men, many in midlife, who decided they wanted something more sustainable. They're in different backgrounds, different starting points, and different reasons for beginning. And what they have in common is a willingness to learn and a desire to build something real. You don't join and get lost. You're welcome, supported, and guided. And that sense of community matters more than people realise, especially when you're building something new. This is usually the moment people know. Not because of numbers, not because of pressure, but because something feels clear. If you're watching this and realising that what you've been doing no longer matches the life you want, and that you're ready to build something more intentional, the next step is to simply have a conversation. No obligation, no rush, just clarity. So reach out to me and let me know that you've watched this webinar. We'll talk through where you're at and whether this actually is the right fit for you. Whatever you decide, I want you to know this. You're not behind. You haven't missed your chance. And it's not too late to build something that lasts.